One of the questions that I keep getting on a very regular basis is about priorities. And I think it's a really valid question. In other words, who do I make the number one priority in my life? What do I make the number one priority in my life? And so I'm going to say something pretty controversial to you to begin today. And then I think more we talk throughout the next 15 or 20 minutes, I think you find that this is a correction and an adjustment so many of us, including myself, need to make. The number one priority in your life, I'm exclusive of God and your faith, but in terms of other people or focuses of yours, the number one priority in your life needs to become you. Yeah, you. And I know initially that sounds selfish, like me. And for so many of us, that's a foreign concept to make ourselves a priority. Isn't that crazy, by the way? That it's a foreign concept for so many of us to make ourselves the number one priority in our life. Most important person in your life as a human being is you, because you can't begin to serve other people. You can't pour from an empty cup. And so many of you, I mean all people, but particularly the ladies, you're constantly serving other people and caring for their needs first, and you always put yourself last. And I know a lot of you men are saying, hey, brother, I do the exact same thing. I care for my family. I care for the people that I work with, my friends. And at the end of the line is always me. And what ends up happening is our cup is empty and we have nothing to give those very people that we think we need to be serving and contributing before ourselves. That's why when you're flying on an airplane, they always tell you put your own oxygen mask on first before you put it on even your child. And I always thought when I was flying, that's crazy. I'm going to put it on myself and what? But I can't begin to help other people if I'm not breathing myself, if I don't have energy and life force myself, if I don't have the cup full in my own life, I can't continue to pour into people. And that's why so many of us feel depleted and tired and fatigued, lost in our lives. Maybe we even feel like our focus isn't where it needs to be. Maybe we lack a happiness in our life. And it's because we're constantly focusing outside of ourselves and we have no reserves, no energy, no time to create and think and innovate and renew and be born again in our lives. And again, I'm not talking about exclusive of God. I look at the relationship that you have with whatever your faith is. You and God are one, right? You're one. Part of that renewing of you, that energizing of you, that refreshing of you should be focusing on that relationship with your higher power. So I'm not talking about that. You know what I mean. Put your own mask on, fill your own cup. And in our lives, we don't do this. And what ends up happening is we belong nowhere. And I want you to remember a few things. The people in your life that you want to help most need the best version of you. They need a version of you that's growing. I often say that if I'm the same person next year at the same time that I am now, I'm of no value to you because you already had that version of me. I want to be replacing myself every year, every day. You know, naturally inside our body, our lung tissue, our bones, everything is renewing itself on a regular basis. It's part of nature. But is your mind renewing? Is your spirit renewing? Is your energy renewing? Probably not, because so many of you put the needs of everybody else first. Your intentions are great, but you're doing it the wrong way. They're not even getting the best of you. They're not getting the most happy, powerful, blissful, growing, the vibrational frequency you're capable of carrying. The most faithful version of you. They're not getting that. They're not getting the strong you. And oftentimes in life, we don't know what we don't know. We don't even know what we're missing. You may say, no, I'm a pretty good version, even as I give to everybody. You don't know what you're capable of by not putting yourself first. And it's not selfish. It's the most unselfish thing you could do would begin to prioritize your own spirit, your own energy, your own focus, your own reading, your own growth, your own renewing. Because probably for a lot of you right now, you're somewhere where you don't feel like you belong, right? You're in a job maybe where you don't feel like you belong. Maybe you're in a relationship where you don't feel like you belong. Maybe you have a group of friends that you've outgrown them, or it's just not what it once was. You don't belong like you used to. Listen to me on this. The longer you believe that you don't belong where you are, eventually you begin to believe, I don't belong anywhere. The longer you stay where you know you don't belong. You stay at a job where you know you don't belong there. You stay there too long, you begin to believe you don't belong anywhere. You stay in a relationship that you know, I don't belong in this relationship. Eventually, you'll believe you don't belong in any, and then you stay for that reason. And that's what I mean by putting ourselves first. You become almost like this elephant, the elephant that's tied to that stake in the ground. You watch these massive animals, multiple ton animals. And what holds them in the ground is this little stake with a string to it. And over time, they're trained, they program themselves that this little stake holds this multi-ton animal in the ground and they don't go anywhere. They just stay in the same little space. That stake is in their mind. They could move that thing in a second. With a flinch, they could move. But they've patterned themselves. They've conditioned themselves to believe that they have to stay where they are, that they're anchored in that spot. And over time, eventually, they stop even trying to move. They've been trained to do that. Well, ironically, in our lives, if we're not renewing ourselves, we're training ourselves to stay. And it's not real. It's make pretend. I'll give you another animal analogy. It's almost like we become like a spider who lives in the web of our own making. And we just stay in this place. And eventually, we can't serve anybody in this web. We can't make a difference for anybody, never mind ourselves. And listen to me, time is running out on you. I don't care if you're 18 years old listening to this or you're 85 years old. Time is running out. This life goes by like a flicker. It's a flicker. It was just yesterday I was turning 21 years old. I remember turning 30 going, man, I remember giving my dad a cup on his 30th birthday saying, my dad is 30. And then I turned 30. And then I remember my kids being born. And I remember then their first day of school. Then they graduated high school. One of my kids get ready to graduate college. Then I was 40 like that. And then I'm 50. It was just a flicker. Heck, here's how crazy I am. I don't know if any of you do this, but I watch college football as a guy. I watch these guys play college football, and I know they're younger than me. But in my mind, this sounds delusional. They're only like 3, 4, 5 years younger than me. I know that sounds crazy when I say it. I'm 30 years older than everybody on that field. But in my mind, it's a 4 or 5 year separation. Is that crazy? It's nuts, but it's one of those stakes in the ground. And I have to tell you, I usually teach things that I've had to work on myself. For years, I just depleted myself caring for everybody else. And I realized I looked around at one point and I was getting older. And I don't feel like I was getting better, not to the extent that I could have. I had planted these proverbial stakes in the ground, not everywhere in my life. You know, when I say things, I think sometimes it's easy to discount. Well, that's not me. Is there an area you do it in your physical life, in your spiritual life, in your financial life? We can have these stakes. We can have these webs in different areas of our lives because we spend all our time. And you know what? Maybe we focus on everybody else in our lives because we can hide in doing that. We don't have to really take a look at ourselves. We don't have to really audit ourselves. We kind of hide in the lives of all the people we care for. But at some point, we're going to wake up and it's going to be us. They may still be in our lives, but my children are going on and having their own lives now. And even the people that you're in your intimate relationships with, their lives will change and evolve as well. And for you to love them the most and have the most rich memories, it has to be a new you, a renewed you. You know, it leads me to another point. Who are you? I know that sounds overly philosophical, and we're not going there today. But if you begin to think about it, like, who do you really think you are? Really, in my opinion, what we are is we're a collection of stories and memories and emotions that are all reinforced with neurology. That's really what we are. You say I or me. When you think about it, it's a collection of stories of your life and memories of your life, emotions of your life. And it's kind of wired with the neurology in our brains. You know, it's interesting. An emotion in your life, a feeling in your life really needs a story to exist. It really does. I mean, the stronger the emotion you attach, the easier you remember the story. You've had lots of things happen in your life you don't remember anymore. One of the reasons you don't remember it wasn't that emotional for you. The feeling wasn't that deep. But when we begin to have stories where there's a major emotion attached to it or a major feeling, then the story sticks. And then we begin to accumulate these stories. Lo and behold, we believe that's who we are. You are not your memories. You are not your stories. You are not your past. You're not even the collection or the accumulation of your achievements. Who you are is a soul, is a spirit that needs to be renewed, that needs to be re-energized, that needs to be, in some sense, born again, energized again, focused again. And we only do that by giving ourselves the level of self-care that's required. Some quiet time, right? Some time in reflection, some time in self-awareness, some auditing of the things in our life that bring us bliss and joy, the things we want to achieve and focus and grow in our lives. So when we begin to evaluate, I've always said, and by the way, sometimes when you've had a past that's actually successful, you can hang on to those stories. We've all met that guy who says, yeah, I was a high school quarterback, and they're 40 years old. They're talking about high school, right? And I always kind of laugh when you hear that person talk. But are you doing that in any area of your life? Maybe something 2 or 3 years ago, 5 years ago? Are you a story about somebody who hurt you? Are you a story about one of your failures or a breakup or a mistake? Do you use those stories as sort of a weapon against yourself? Do you ever use those stories as excuses to not grow and achieve now? Have you taken, see, it's not the events of our life that define us. It's the meaning we attach to those events. And the stronger the emotion, the more that meaning stays deeply within us. And we become a collection of what we believe life means or what we believe we mean. And the longer you begin to believe you don't belong here and you stay there, you begin to believe that you mean you belong nowhere. And you begin to tread water in your life. You have that stake in the ground. Listen to me. Settling sucks. Settling sucks. Stop settling. You do not get in your life what you hope for or what you dream for or what you'd like to have. You get in your life what you believe you're worth and what you're willing to fight for, what you're willing to change for. If you really love these people that you keep putting priority in your life, will you please fight for them and make yourself a priority? Will you please fight for them and lift that stake out of the ground? Get out of that web. Stop being this collection of these BS stories you tell yourself. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And by the way, the story gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And the more you repeat it, the more that neurology connects, the more it's deeply embedded in you. You got to tell yourself a new story. And you don't have to change the story of the past. You got to create a new compelling story for the future. What's your new story? What's the new story? What's the new you? What's the new version of you? Even if the old one's one you like. For most of us, it's not. But even if it was one you like, you want to stay in that story forever? What's the point of having another day? God did not give you another day because you need it. God gave you another day because somebody needs you. And it's a new version of you that they need. So I came here today to remind you that it's time for you to change. Lift the stake out of the ground. You belong in your dreams. Let me say that to you again. You belong in your dreams. You belong in the new story, not the old story, whether it's a bad one or a good one. You don't belong there. It's a figment of your imagination, even if it really happened. You've repeated it and repeated it and repeated it and made the emotion bigger. And guess who suffers? The very people that you think you should be serving first, because they don't get to see this beautiful, productive new version of you. They stay with some version. By the way, you may be growing a little bit. You may be expanding a little bit. Things may be going pretty well, but could they go better? Could you be happier? Could you be a different version of you? Could it be bigger? And if I could give you one last piece of advice, make it bigger. Make it bigger. Make your life bigger. Dream big. Think big thoughts. You can always back it down and settle for the little ones. Dreaming is free. We don't charge you for it. Yet so many people don't even dream anymore. When you were a little boy or a little girl, you had all kinds of dreams. You're going to be an astronaut or an NFL quarterback or the president of the United States or a powerful businesswoman. And as life begins to happen, we begin to believe these stories that other people tell us about ourselves and the meanings we take from them and the emotions that become embedded in them. And they stick. And those are the stakes. And then we go, well, I'm just serving everybody else. I'll get around to me. And you never get around to you, do you? You never get around to you. So who should be the number one priority in your life? Between you and God? You. And only from there can you pour from a full cup. That's what I recommend you do today. Make these changes, and I think you'll be very grateful that you did it. And more importantly, these people that you love or that you want to lead, that you want to make a difference for, they'll be the biggest beneficiaries. Hey guys, I'm so excited to tell you this right now. Here's the deal. There's a chance now for you to be on this show with me, and I'm going to do it every single month. Let me tell you how you qualify to get on the show. Every single day on my social media, I run something called the 2-minute drill. So if that's Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, if you follow me on those platforms, when I make a post within the first 2 minutes, so have your notifications turned on. If you just make a comment on my post, every day we take everybody who's made a comment and we pick a winner every single day. And that person is going to have an opportunity to be on this show with me and get coached. So if you're interested, follow me on social media. When I make a post, make a comment, and eventually, hopefully you can get selected to win. We're picking somebody every single day, and I'll have those folks on the program. If you want to get a text reminder about my post or this program, 714-916-9144. You can text me at that number and you'll get daily reminders. I would love to have you on this show. Follow me on social media and engage in the 2-minute drill. max out. And so it's that important to me. People ask me often, what were some of the decisions and choices and areas I focused on that made the biggest difference for me in my life? And today's topic is the thing that I would probably give you the gift of first. And that is the power of your identity. See, I believe the most powerful force in the world is to be consistent with the thoughts, ideas, concepts, and beliefs you hold to be true about yourself. And that is what identity is. Identity is the governor on every single area of your life. It literally sets the temperature for all of the conditions of your life. Shakespeare has this incredible quote that says, "We know what we are, but not what we may be." And the who you may be is going to be dictated by your ability to alter your identity, because you are going to always be consistent with what you believe you're worth and what you believe you deserve, or what is your identity. Your identity, the best analogy I could give you, is like a thermostat sitting on the wall of your life. It sets the entire temperature for the conditions of your life in multiple areas. And so most people think their life is dictated by external circumstances. They spend their entire life trying to control what is outside of them. You've all heard the great saying that people in 12-step programs talk about learning to control the things they can and letting go of the things that they can't control. And the fact of the matter is, you cannot always control the external factors that are impacting you in your life. The good news is, it's the external things in your life that do not dictate the direction or the ultimate destination of your life. That is a fallacy. Listen to me when I tell you this. External circumstances do not dictate the ultimate destination of your life. It's an internal game. You and your faith, your God, are what will control the direction of your life, not the external things that are impacting you all the time. And this identity is that internal thermostat. It sets the temperature, just like a thermostat sitting on the wall, of the conditions of your entire life. Let me give you an example of how the thermostat of our lives works. The best analogy I could give you is exactly how one works in the room I'm sitting in. It sets the temperature of the room. And so the external conditions don't impact the internal temperature of this room, because that thermostat regulates the condition of the room. So if we open the door and the windows in this room and cold air blew in here, the thermostat would kick on, wouldn't it, and heat the room back up to 75 degrees. So no matter what hit it, it regulates the temperature of the room. The reverse is also true. If a bunch of hot air blew in the room, if we open the doors and the windows, the thermostat would cool the room back down and regulate it to 75 degrees. Guess what? That's exactly how your life works. Once you accept this truth, it is a fact that it's not the external things that are happening, it's the internal thermostat. Too often in life, people don't work on changing their identity. They're always working on producing external results. Have you ever known somebody who was wealthy and no longer is? Have you ever known somebody who made a bunch of money and no longer does? How about somebody who was in a great relationship and that relationship no longer exists? How about someone who got in great shape that is no longer in that shape again? If your results begin to exceed your internal thermostat, you will find a way to cool your life back down to what you believe you're worth and you're comfortable at your identity. You'll think it's coincidental. Oh, this accident happened, or this appointment canceled, or this circumstance took place. It's not coincidence. All of those things have happened because you set the thermostat of your life and you've regulated what you're going to get. Isn't that incredible? That you can learn all the talents, the behaviors, the skills, the tactics, all the strategies that I teach you. But if you don't alter that thermostat internally, you could have all of the skills of a 100-degree producer and you will live a 75-degree existence, because you will turn the air conditioner of your life on back down to cool it where you're comfortable. It's also true, by the way, you've seen this in your own life. Maybe you've had something really good going in business before. You've got momentum. It seems like things are happening great. And then you wake up 4, 5, 6 months later and you've cooled your life, your business, right back down to where it was before. Maybe you'd saved some money at one time and then coincidentally your car broke down, or a bill happened, or there was a run of birthday parties, and all of a sudden that bank account's back to where it always was. It's not coincidental. You've cooled the conditions back down again. And so you've seen this happen. Maybe you got in great shape at one point, but your identity wasn't that fit a person, and you've cooled it back down to about what you're comfortable being. This is true in your faith and your relationships. By the way, you have multiple thermostat settings. You have one in your faith, you have one in your fitness, one in your money, one in your happiness, right? One in your business life. So there's multiple identities we have. The reverse is also true. There's been times in your life where the circumstances, the conditions were terrible. You thought you'd never get out of it. You're never going to eat again. Well, guess what? You ate again, didn't you? And you heated your life back up to that same place again. So you've proven this over and over in your life, haven't you? So have I, so has every single human being. The governor on our life, the regulator of our life, is our identity, which is the internal thermostat that sets the temperature for our life. So the key in life is to learn all the thoughts, the skills, the tactics, and the strategies that can heat our life up in the areas that matter most to us. But if we don't simultaneously change the conditions of our thermostat, change what we're comfortable living at, change our identity, our worth, change the thoughts, beliefs, concepts, and value we hold to ourselves, we will cool or heat our life back to that regulated temperature. And so I'm telling you, the overall key to changing the external conditions of your life is changing that internal thermostat setting. So that's what we're going to talk about, some strategies on today. Just being aware that you need to alter the thermostat is a life-changing, liberating condition. I cover this in very specific detail in hashtag Max Out Your Life, my book. It's a quick read, 100 pages. I wrote it so that every page has strategies on it, no fluff. If you want the book, go to maxoutbook.com. If you put in the code MAXOUT, I'll buy the book for you. So I cover this in detail there, but I want to cover it in detail right now with you as well. What you need to be doing is becoming aware of how important it is that you adjust this thermostat setting as you produce better results, as you start to learn new skills and strategies and tactics. See, you can move from an average business into an extraordinary business with incredible opportunity, but you will produce the same results you're getting in the average business if you don't change that thermostat setting up to 95 or 100 or 120 degrees of what you believe you're worth, the thoughts, concepts, and beliefs you hold true to be about yourself. So it is the regulator on our lives, and it's the main thing I work on with my private coaching, with some of the elite performers I work with in business and athletics, in entertainment and politics, is me working with them on changing that internal thermostat where we can heat it higher and higher and higher so that they can produce the results and the conditions of their life, stay and exceed those levels all the time. In fact, in my own life, I'm always working on my self-confidence. I'm working on my tactics and strategies, my ability to influence, right? My thoughts, all of those different things. But the thing I'm most obsessed about that I know is going to get me to the ultimate version of me is constantly elevating the temperature in the areas that matter to me, adjusting that thermostat setting higher and higher and higher and higher so that I can get those conditions to match it, because it always will. You will always get your thermostat setting, always in your life. So can I give you any insights as to how to change that thermostat setting? I can. Let me give you a couple. The most powerful way and the easiest way to change your thermostat setting is by adding people to your circle, very close proximity, that live at a higher temperature in that area than you do. For example, in your faith, let's just say, you're a 75-degreer in your faith. You've already seen this. You can't possibly begin to regularly associate with good, godly people who pray regularly, who try to live righteously, and they're at 110, 120 degrees of faith in their life, and not have that proximity heat you up. Now, you won't get to where they are. You'll get to somewhere between where you are at 75 degrees and they are at 110. Over time, you become 100-degreer. And you alter the thermostat setting through association. Same in business. If you and I were to hang around each other every single day, and let's say you were a 75-degreer in business, hypothetically, and I don't know that about you, but let's just say you were, and I was a 150-degreer, and we hung around each other all the time. Don't you think through that association, especially if you had 2 or 3 or 4 people like me in your life, that just over time, you don't even feel it. You're at 80, you're at 85, you're at 90, you're at 95, and that's where you are. We understand the power of this with our children, because we know at school, the teachers have influence over them, they're mentors, but the people that really have influence over our children are their friends, because they're around them all the time. And so we know it sets their temperature. This is true in fitness. If you're a 75-degree of fitness, and every meal, every day at the gym, all your associations, hypothetically speaking, were with someone who was shredded and fit the way you wanted to look at 150 degrees, you know over time you get heated up. And so you can't be with someone every day. You can't be with them all the time. But the key is to get more proximity in the areas that matter with people whose thermostat setting is higher than yours. I am a product. You are listening to me right now because I've been so obsessed with this concept of adding new associations to my life that live in the areas that I want to improve in at higher temperatures than me. It's my obsession to this day. I'll give you a secret. One of the reasons I even do my show is I know that I'm influencing many of these guests in the areas that matter most to them through our proximity, and in some cases they do it for me. And so I'm obsessed with the power of association, but I don't just associate. See, all personal says, yeah, you're the 5 people you hang around.
Kinda. You really are the 5 to 10 people you hang around if you're conscious all the time of studying them, of observing them, of asking questions, of the fact that you should be altering your thermostat setting. That's when it really moves. It's not just hanging around. It's consciously and intentionally spending time with people where you allow it to impact you, where you study them, where you really observe them, where you're open to their influence. There has to be a level of trust before you can do that, where you surrender yourself to them. But it's not just being around them. It's intentionally being around people that alters that thermostat setting. So power of association is the main way to do it. Second way to alter your identity is in a short window of time, behave completely differently. In a 30-day window of time in your fitness life, you shock your system into eating or training completely differently than you used to. Or in your business life, you make 100 times more phone calls, 100 more contacts. You do something in a very short window of time that shocks you into believing, my gosh, I can never go back where I was before. You trick your brain into believing you're different. There's this part of our brain that always wants to be consistent with what we're worth. Well, if in a short window of time I begin to behave completely differently, your brain begins to believe you deserve something differently. When you begin to do the things nobody else is willing to do, you begin to believe you deserve the results nobody else deserves to get. This is important also because it changes the water line. It's almost like a water line in the pool. If you raise it, it leaves a new mark. Have you ever seen that before in a lake or a pool? Where you raise the water line in a short window of time and it just changes the mark in your life. It changes the thermostat setting. So you can alter things in your life in short bursts, and I do this often, in an area where I really need to change. Like right now, I just started back on a really seriously, deeply committed fitness journey. I want to get back and past where I've ever been in fitness in my life. So I'm going to add some of these new associations. I'm going to train with a new group of people because I've been training alone. I'm going back to training with some people that are fitter than me, men and women that are fitter than me. That's my first combination. That'll alter my thermostat setting, our proximity. And secondly, I'm going psycho the next 30 days. I'm going psycho. I'm altering my nutrition and my diet dramatically, my workouts dramatically, and I'm going to shock my system in the next 30 days into changing the water line, changing that temperature setting. That's the second way you alter identity, alter the thermostat setting so that you alter the external results. I've said this to you before as well. See, beliefs are so important to guard. Because once you have a belief, your brain goes to work, and I've said this in another audio video, where your brain has to go to work to prove your beliefs to be true. Your brain literally goes to work on finding the evidence to prove you right. And so that identity, you're constantly reinforcing it. Let me give you an example of what I mean. If you believe a certain worth about yourself, a certain identity, that impacts the type of action you're willing to take. So if there's a goal you've got set, it doesn't matter what it is, pick a goal. To the extent that you believe it's consistent with your identity is to the extent that you will make an effort towards it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, however, because what happens is if your identity is here and the goal is there, you will only make an effort congruent with what you believe you're worth. And so that limited effort you make produces the result not consistent, and it reinforces the belief. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you set a goal that is inconsistent with an identity you're working on. You will only make an effort consistent with the identity, which will get you to here, doesn't produce the result, and it reinforces this belief you have about yourself. So it's important as you set new goals, as you set new visions, that you also upgrade your identity simultaneously. You're in process of upgrading it because that identity impacts the effort you make, right? Impacts the will you put towards it, and that will is reinforced by the lack of result. And so it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. So your mind has this belief it wants to prove to be true, and it starts to find references. So if you believe you're 75 degrees, it's going to start finding legs to put under that table to make it immobile so it can't move to prove you right. And so our identity equals our effort, and the challenge is that effort produces the result. And so this identity has everything to do with the effort you make, which produces the result, which will reinforce the identity or the lack thereof. So it's critical that you upgrade identity with your new visions and goals. The next layer of this is you need to stop what's no longer needed. In other words, there were behaviors and thoughts you've had in the past that were needed to produce the results you currently have. But you need to stop what's no longer needed. Maybe you're continuing a behavior in your life that's no longer needed. Maybe you're continuing a thought or a worry that at one time was needed, but no longer is. Maybe there's a stress or an anxiety or a belief you're holding true to be about yourself that maybe you needed at some point in your life that you no longer need. It could be something to protect yourself from fear, to protect yourself from harm, or to serve you in getting through a certain circumstance. But if we're not conscious of dropping a thought or a behavior that's no longer needed, we take old thoughts, old behaviors that served an old version of ourselves into trying to become the new version of ourselves. So ask yourself that question. What do I need to drop that's no longer needed? Is it a person? Is it a thought? Is it a behavior? Or is it an emotion? One of those things you probably are carrying with you from the past that maybe you needed to get through a circumstance. Maybe you needed to get through a relationship, through a setback, through a failure, or just to produce the results you currently get. But that thought, that behavior, that emotion, that person is no longer needed for you to go to the next level of your identity, the next level of your performance, the next level of yourself. And then finally is this. If you're stuck in a story. That's where you're stuck. There's a story you're telling yourself that doesn't serve you anymore. And you have to evaluate what that story is. I'm serious. Right now, if you say, Ed, I'm kind of stuck where I am. Well, what you need to do is you need to alter your associations. You need to do something in a short window of time. No question about it. You definitely need to evaluate what is no longer needed and evaluate the story you're telling yourself. There's all kinds of stories we tell ourselves that don't serve us anymore. This is critical. Maybe it's a story about your past, a story about your parents, a story about a previous relationship, a story about a success you used to have. You keep talking about that doesn't serve you to get to the next level. If I can be real with you, whatever you've achieved up to this point, that story you keep talking about, every second you spend in that old story about what you've achieved, your degree, some business you had, one thing you were real successful at in the past, every time you live in that story, you're stripping time and focus from the new story. What's the new story you're telling yourself? You can't have a new identity without a new story. What's the old story you keep repeating? Maybe it's not a success. Maybe it's a failure that you've had. It was a business setback. It was the market turned. It was the economy. It was someone who did you wrong. A relationship that let you down. A business partner who wasn't consistent. A failure you've had. A poor decision you made. A mistake you made in your life. And you're repeating this story to yourself, simultaneously trying to create a new identity. You can't take that old story into the new identity. One of the things we have to do to create a new identity is to begin to tell a new story. What's your new story? Who are you now? What are you all about now? Where are you going now? What's this new version of you? See, here's what's amazing. At any point in your life, you can just decide to write a new script. You could decide to become a whole new character. See, the leading character in the story of your life is you. And guess what? You and God control the script. You could write a new script at any time you want. Listen to me. At any time you want, you can simply decide to be a new character. I'm strong now. I'm beautiful now. I'm handsome now. I'm bold now. I'm funny now. I'm smart now. I'm going there now. Stop telling the old story. Here's the truth. Nobody cares. No one cares if you had a failure. No one cares if you've had a setback. No one cares if you had a victory. And none of those failures, none of those setbacks, none of those victories, and that old character you keep playing is the very thing that will prevent you from becoming this new version of you. It's a story if you're stuck. It's an old story you're telling with an old character that was last year's version, last decade's version. Who's the new character? What's the new script? What's the new story? I must tell you, I have a lot of weaknesses, a lot of things I do that don't serve me. But this identity thing, I get this. It's the key. Now, there's a lot of little mini things in life that matter. There's never one thing. If you said, what's the key? I can tell you, it's my addiction and my obsession to working on my identity. It's the thought of mine that dominates most of my thinking. That's number one. So I'm conscious of the concept. That's huge. Just being aware of the concept will put you light years ahead of 99.9% of the just awareness of the power of identity. Just now you knowing about the thermostat puts you in the 0.1% of all the people on the spinning earth right now. And then the next thing I'm really focused on is always adding people to my life in the areas that matter to me that live at higher temperatures than me. The second thing is I'm constantly doing things in short bursts of time to change the water line. I'm also super obsessed with dropping what's no longer needed. There were certain things I needed to think and do and say, or people I needed to be around, emotions I needed to have, that got me to the place I'm currently at. I'm evaluating all the time. What is no longer needed? What emotion, what anxiety, what thought, what belief, what person, what behavior is no longer needed in my life? And then lastly, I never tell the old story. I don't like telling the old story. I'm constantly trying to write the new script, become the new character in my life. And it could just be the new emotions. It could be the new beliefs I have. It could be the new story, the new place I'm moving. But I'm constantly retelling a new story all the time. I'm constantly obsessed with writing the next chapter of my life, not reading the previous ones. The happiest and most fulfilled people don't read the past chapters of their life, whether they're good or bad. They are writing new ones all the time. These are the keys of changing the internal thermostat of our lives, and ultimately are the keys of changing the external circumstances of our lives. I know today helped you.
I have to ask you a question. I wonder where your confidence comes from and if you've struggled with it. Because you have this very beautiful combination of people that I love, which is they're confident, yet it's combined with a tremendous amount of humility.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you struggle with your confidence in the past or currently, even do you have it now?
Yeah.
And what are some of the things you do to help yourself, or what could other people do to help themselves with it?
Yeah, exactly, Ed. I struggled with my confidence early when I was younger in life, and especially when I stepped up to pastor.
Sure.
Because there are thoughts telling us, or telling me, I don't want to speak for you, but I think they come to us all saying just what I said a while ago. I'm not as talented as Ed, or I'm not as strong as Phil, or there's always something trying to push us down, to keep us from our potential. And what helped me to build my confidence, a couple things. Let me get this one first. I started playing a different recording in my mind. When those thoughts told me, Joel, nobody's going to listen to you. You're going to get up in front of people and not know what to say. You're going to look like a fool. I quit playing those. They kept coming, but I quit playing them, and I would just replace it with what the scripture says, what God says. Just, I'm strong, I'm confident, I'm well able, this is my time. I just stayed positive toward myself. And you make a good point, Ed, because I don't mean this in arrogance or like, we're better than somebody, but we're not worse than anybody. And I think you have to have a right. I don't think you'll rise any higher than the way you see yourself.
100%.
And I think so many people see themselves limited, and hey, the way I saw myself is I can't do what my dad did. I don't have that authority to get up in front of people, and I'm too quiet, I'm too shy. I'm like the coach, I'm too small. But you know what? You got to tune all that out. So I think a big part for me was letting the right recording play in my mind, just changing those thoughts. And I would talk to myself, Ed. Maybe not always out loud, but there were times, especially early on a Saturday night, when I didn't want to get up on Sunday morning and speak in front of people because those thoughts fear was trying to hold me back. I would look in the mirror and just say, Joel, you are strong. You are well able. You've been raised up for such a time as this. I would talk myself into it.
You did. That's interesting, because I do the exact same thing. And I think some people, this is why it's so powerful the way you said it, Joel. I don't know that some people are even aware that recording's going on.
I know.
And I think if you just get quiet and ask yourself, what are you saying to yourself? What are you thinking about yourself? Second thing is, you don't have to believe everything you think. Not everything you think is true. In fact, a lot of the things you think aren't true. And you can actually take control of that recording, as Joel said. You can actually begin to believe those things. Philippians 4:13 tells us that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. Well, listen to me. He didn't say some things or just things. He said all things. That's an important word, all. Too many people, I think, God's in their life on Sunday at church, Bible study's great, but when they walk into a board meeting or a speech or an interview like this, all of a sudden they're alone.
Yeah.
And that's when that conversation starts to happen. My recommendation, everybody, is don't leave him at the door then. He said all things, right? I know. It's so good. Absolutely. That's very powerful. And I like that point too, that, some people leave God out. Well, no, the point I really wanted to make is that what you said, that people don't know the recording's going on. And I think some people don't realize it's not supposed to be negative. I think that's just life has pushed us down, or what somebody said has got into that recording, and they don't even realize it's just kind of a subconscious of, you're not that talented, or you can't get that position, or you can't make that speech. But I think it's a subtlety there. And it's very powerful to say, if you get quiet and listen and think, are there things that are limiting me? Am I defeating myself with my own thoughts? Am I defeating myself thinking that,
maybe that I've made too many mistakes in life. Am I defeating myself because this last thing didn't work out, that it's never going to work out again? You got to get those thoughts changed and, know that, what, I believe our brightest days are still out in front of us.
Yeah.
I believe that God, he's using everything. Like I said with Joseph a while ago, you've had some disappointments maybe, or a setback, or something didn't work out, but I believe that's still leading you to where God wants you to go, to bigger and greater things. So if we can get our recording going right, then I believe we can get there.
So do I. And as you were talking, I was just thinking about, so often I think people think their current mess disqualifies them. Mm-hmm. The mistake, Joe, you don't know the mistakes I've made. You don't know the sins I've committed. You don't know how broke I am. You don't know the things I'm ashamed of. The truth is, God does know those things, and it does not disqualify you from a bright future. In fact, he loves you just as much as he did before you did those things. Yeah. My children screw up all the time, right? Our kids do this. I'm sure yours have too. I've never thought once when my son or daughter's made a mistake that disqualifies them from being happy or successful. And that's, your Father in heaven's not thinking of that of you either, right? But I think we judge ourselves with the mistakes we make, thinking somehow, okay, because I've done that, or I've thought that, or I didn't do this or that, that disqualifies me from my dreams. That's untrue, correct?
That's so untrue what you're saying, because God gives us another chance, and I think we, like you said, a lot of times we live with that guilt and that condemnation that's pushing us down. But I think of it like this, Ed. We've all made mistakes. You have to receive mercy and move on. But here's the point I want to make. You have enough people in life against you. Don't be against yourself. Don't be defeating yourself. I've made too many mistakes, or even that negative inner dialogue as well. But some of the greatest people in the Bible made big mistakes. I think about Phil, my friend Phil Muncie's over here. We talk about sometimes Abraham, the father of our faith. Well, he had a baby out of wedlock. He lied and said his wife was his sister, and yet he's called the father of our faith. And so God was showing us that, hey, don't try to make mistakes. Don't live sloppy, but we're all going to make mistakes. And so you got to get back up and like you said it earlier, get back in the game. I mean, there's a game going on. There's still a great destiny for you to fulfill. I really believe this. His mercy is bigger than any mistake, and he can still get you to where you're supposed to be, but you have to get back in the game. I don't think God's going to come and force us to do something. You got to stir your faith up, and I like to think of it like this. Somebody needs what you have. Your family needs your love. Somebody needs your gifts. This world won't be as bright as it should be without your smile, without your hug, without you releasing your talents and your potential. So, don't be selfish and keep it to yourself. Get back in the game and start moving forward. And as you do that, you're going to see God open doors and make things happen that you couldn't make happen. Just signs of his favor as you step into, just new levels of your destiny.
That game, by the way, is important that you play your own game. You said sometimes you're slipping a little bit, like you go, that guy didn't have a good morning today or whatever. I heard you say this a while ago. I'm going to bring up something you said that might help you today and help everybody else.
I would love that.
And it's something that I do. So, like, you said something about all you've accomplished in your life. It's like looking back and going, man, I've accomplished some things. Everybody listening to this has overcome so many things in their life they don't give themselves credit for. Yeah. But one of the things that's helped me, like I wrote my book, the last book I wrote is really a lot about my childhood and my dad and drinking. My dad got sober, and it's a great story, but there's a lot of power for me, even when I'm having bad days as a grown 51-year-old man. Usually, everyone, I want you to hear this. Now we're going deep, but this is for Leanne too. Usually the 51-year-old man is not having the experience that's so bad. It's me as a little boy who, like the 51-year-old dude, is like living it out again. Even if he hasn't had, like, I'll go 3 months, I'm doing great. I haven't had a lot of anxiety, haven't had a lot of worry. I've had some, and then like, bam, it comes back again. Or bam, imposter syndrome, or bam, I'm insecure. Or one of my new things the last 5 or 8 years has been like, is it worth it? Like I do this thing with me, is it worth it? It's just this weird game you play with yourself. And for me, one of the pathways out is I go back to this sounds corny. I know some of my dudes listening to this, but I go back to me, the little boy, and I have a little conversation. I don't have the conversation with just the 51-year-old me who's going through it. I go back to the little boy. I just give him a hug and say, hey man, everything's going to be okay. You're going to have a great life. You're going to be amazing. You're loved. You're special. You're powerful. You're giving. And somehow there's a lot of power that happens to me when I go back to him. Number one, I kind of heal that little dude, but it also automatically sort of gives me a perspective that I'm no longer that little boy. I'm 51. I've had a pretty good life in between. You said something. You said,
I got to learn, or I'm learning how to love myself as a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
Like, have you done that? And
Yeah,
does that help you when you do it? You did it this morning.
I did.
Okay.
I just put my hand to my heart because I know it's activated. Like you're saying, I know when this is happening. This is not Leanne, the 40-year-old woman.
Yeah.
And I just put my hand on my heart. I'm like, it's okay. Like, it's okay. And sometimes just that moment of breaking the pattern, the mind pattern of ruminating or whatever it may be, just a moment of compassion is so helpful. And I think that's when I was saying, you know, there's this like piece of me that I've kind of learned how to move aside, that when that little girl is super activated, it's like that's the piece that I'm not getting rid of her. I'm not like pushing her down. I'm just saying you can step over here and I've got this.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to you. We'll come back and you're always there. Like, you know, there's not, I think for so long there was such a disassociative piece for me of having to, like I said, come out of that freeze state and work. And so I had to disassociate. And so I'm now not disassociating, but bringing all of me into the room. And that means bringing my anxiety and my fear and all of those things right along with me.
Really, really good, Leanne. That's really, really good. This is why I do the show. I only do one a week, and I do it because I think like someone's life's going to change. And today, like lots of lives are changing because we're just human. With the symptoms of how we live out parts of these wounds we have is different, but the disease is the same for all of us. The disease is very similar. I'm curious. I've always wanted to ask somebody who's extraordinary. So, I mean, I know what it's like. I think like I don't know what my gift is. I think it's probably when I'm on stage speaking, I can feel there's just something there. Could you share with me and everyone?
That's a great one, Jason. Now we're going to save the best for last.
Well, first thing, man, is this is one of the most wonderful days I've ever had, brother. I mean, I was looking forward to today. I had no idea. You're such a good man, Dave, but like you're surrounding yourself with really good men. This is a great group of people. And so are the guys that are over here too. Like I wish we go 2 or 3 more hours. I mean it too. I mean, that's why I said, let's just keep going, you know? And so I just want to tell you, man, I really appreciate this. I'll give everybody something else to take away. I have a chapter in the book about this, becoming an impossibility thinker. Start to operate out of your imagination and your dreams and not your history and your memories. So when you were a kid, the reason you were so happy when you were a kid, especially when you were little, 1, you were just with God more recently. And 2, you lived in your imagination all the time.
Yeah.
You were imagining. And slowly but surely in life, that begins to get suppressed. And we begin to accumulate memories and history. And then we operate out of these patterns of these memories and these histories. And we just sort of repeat the same emotions and the same life with a different set of circumstances with different people. But it's the same stuff out of our history and our memory. But if you begin to create a new life out of your imagination and your dreams and do it repetitively, like give yourself the gift of dreaming more often. And I'm not talking about when you sleep. I'm talking about when you're awake, driving in the car. Like you're a dreamer, Dave. Like you're a dreamer.
Bro, listen to me real quick. I don't want to take too much time. First time I flew a helicopter, I went and did a demo flight. I probably had $1,000 in the bank. I went and did a demo flight. It was $50. They were trying to get me signed up for school. After that moment, I was hooked on helicopters. I just could not think about anything else. So I would drive down the road. I'm a 25-year-old man driving down the road, and I would grab the steering wheel as if it was the cyclic on a helicopter, and I would reach down and grab the imaginary collective, and I was driving down the road pretending and visualizing that it was my helicopter.
Yes.
And guess what? 5 years later, however long it was, I bought the helicopter of my dreams, and now I just bought another helicopter that is even bigger and better than anything I could have ever imagined. It's because I literally, if you can feel the emotions of what you want, it's gonna happen.
It does. And by the way, what they wouldn't know about you and I and our friends is we're always texting each other our dreams and stuff we're working on too. Like we live in our imagination and our dreams. That's a perfect example. And by the way, you did one other thing. Sometimes go touch your dreams just a little bit. I used to do this thing. We live at the beach now, but when we didn't have a lot of money, I'd say, babe, if I have a really good 2 months and we close a bunch of sales, let's do one night at the Ritz-Carlton. We'll go do one night, $400 or whatever it was. I'll go play golf. You go get a massage, sit around the pool. We'll have dinner that night. We'll touch the dream for one night.
Dude, I love that.
And so we would do this right. And if I didn't hit the sales, we didn't go. If I didn't hit the number, we didn't go. But what would happen is, here's why it matters. Your mind gravitates towards what it's most familiar with. So if it's familiar with your worries and your fears and your past and all the stuff you're concerned about, it keeps moving there. But if it's familiar with your imagination and your dreams, and you have the benefit of flying that helicopter once, touching one night of your dreams, going walking at a beach and just looking up at the beach houses, which architecture do you like, which door, all of a sudden that starts to feel those emotions, and you move towards that. Like you do that governor on that airplane, right? It moves towards it. So that would be my key. Start to imagine and dream again and get out of your memory and your history all the time.
Bro, that is incredible advice.
As you go to great lengths in the book to point out, your actions also have to line up. You're never going to be able to think your way to success.
I love Think and Grow Rich. It's my favorite book other than my scriptures, but I got to be honest with you. You don't just think and get rich. You got to do stuff. The question then becomes, what do I need to think and what do I need to do simultaneously or in congruency that produce the result? And that's why I did the things that I had the things in the book. Second chapter, as you know, and I know you're a huge Matrix fan. As I'm writing this chapter, this is Tom's chapter.
I was like, this is the greatest chapter ever written. I love this.
But one of the points that I make in the book is being able to slow things down and get into bullet time. But there's two things I love about the Matrix. One, I think that's an absolute example of the reticular activating system in the brain. And so you do have to be good. But the question in life becomes, listen, I believe you're one decision, one relationship, one meeting, one show, one thought, one new emotion, potentially away from changing your entire life. I've proven this in my life, so have you. And the question then becomes, how do you find them? And this RAS is super powerful in our brains because it's the mechanism that filters the entire world to us. It literally reveals to us our reality, just like you just said. It reveals our reality. I just bought a Tesla. I drove it here today. I like what Musk is doing. I'm like, I'm going to get one of these Teslas. Man, every freaking where I go, I see Teslas now. Red one, babe. Hey, there's a white one. There's a plaid. 3 lanes over, other side of the freeway. Babe, black Tesla just drove by. She's like, how in the world do you know this? Because it's become important to me. And it's now in my filter. It's now a part of my RAS. That's why when you're in a loud room, all the auditory sounds, someone doesn't even say it loud. Tom, you can hear your own name in a room because it's become important to you. See, the question in life is, can you make your goals, your ambitions, the emotions you want, the thoughts, the relationships you need to become your Teslas? Right. And if they become your Teslas, things slow down. The other part of the Matrix I love, I'll come up for air, is Neo is the one. He's the one. And when my wife and I were little, I literally live on the beach now, brother, that we used to walk on. We were in high school, we were dating, and we'd walk on this beach and go, babe, I'm going to get you one of these beach houses. We're going to get one of these beach houses. She goes, you are? I go, yep. And I have no idea how. And I go home, I go, Dad, who are these freaking people? Who lives there? He's like, I don't know who the heck they are. They don't work with me, you know. And I figured something out. When you find a family or a person that's happy and successful, or either one, somewhere back in their lineage, they weren't. That family wasn't. And then the one shows up. The one. And that one changes that family forever. It changes the way they live, the way the world treats them, the way they think. They're the Neo. They're the one in their family. And in my family, I'm the one. I'm the one. I didn't like it. I didn't hope for it. I fought for it. I fought for it. I did the things in this book to become the one in my family. And if you're listening to this or watching it, why don't you consider the fact that potentially maybe you're the one? And the fact that you don't think you are, or that you're not qualified to be the one, or don't have the background or the skills or the confidence, probably makes you the one, because that was me.
Now, what does the one do? What do they introduce to the family that changes it so profoundly?
I think they introduce a different way of thinking, Tom. I think they introduce a belief system that the world doesn't dictate the terms to our family anymore. We're going to dictate the terms to the world, and that we have some measure of control over the results of our lives. I think most people go through their lives thinking they have no measure of control. And I had a huge breakthrough, brother, 2 weeks ago. After I wrote the book, and as you know, as I wrote the book, when my dad died, I thought, I need to write this book because my dad taught me all these profound lessons of one more, and I'm the next to go. I don't know if it's this week or 60 years from now, but I'm the next to go. And I woke up about 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:15 exactly, and I woke up Christiane. I said, babe, wake up. And I was in tears. This was just 2 weeks ago. I said, babe, someone helped Daddy. Now, I'm 51, bro. My dad was sober for 35 years. This never occurred to me. She goes, what? I said, someone helped my dad. She goes, what do you mean? Someone helped my dad in his darkest moment of his life get sober. In some coffee shop or quiet place when my dad was down on his knees, losing his family, some precious human being helped my dad. I don't know who they are. They changed our entire family. Max and Bella's lives are changed because of this person that we don't know. Millions of people I've reached because this person helped my dad. She goes, that's amazing. I said, here's what's more amazing. What qualified them to help my dad? Their shame, their mess, that they were also a drug addict and alcoholic. This precious soul, the things they're the most ashamed of, that they think disqualified them the most in life, is the very thing that qualified them to help my dad in the most important moment of his life, is where their giftedness, their experience, their shame, their setbacks is what qualified them to change my life and my dad's life in this dark space. I've been in personal development. My dad's been sober forever. It never occurred to me. The mess you have in your life, the things you are most ashamed of and embarrassed by, that you think are the most insignificant, that disqualify you the most, are probably the very things that will qualify you to connect with another human being in your business or your personal life to change their life. And don't ever underestimate the ripple effect. They were just helping some man get sober in some dark space in his life, never knowing the one was his son. Never knowing that this whole existence of my family was changed, not just by me being the one, not just by my dad's decision, but by a completely flawed person. Remember this, think about this person. At some point, maybe they were stealing from their family, driving drunk, did things they're completely ashamed of in those states. That was the experience that qualified them to change my dad's life. So if you're listening to this or watching it, stop discounting yourself. Stop carrying these bags of your life of the things you're embarrassed or ashamed of or that you think are insignificant, that don't amount to anything. Those are the things, you, precious you, that could change another precious human being's life in a moment where they need you the most. And if you don't believe you're qualified, if you don't believe you can do it,